You were born in some forgotten European field, where the wind screams louder than men and the mud is the only thing that never abandons you. No king knows the name of your village, and perhaps it's for the best. A handful of houses, a crooked bell, and a constant smell of smoke and sweat. As a child, you thought the distant sound of war trumpets was music until you realized each blast meant someone leaving and never returning. Your father said messengers were heroes, carrying the king's word like sacred fire. You believed it, of course. Children believe everything, until the first corpse appears before them with an arrow in its eye. When you were old enough to walk without tripping over your own legs, they put you on a skinny horse and gave you a scroll. No armor, no sword, just a piece of paper and the most glorious and idiotic order in history. Get there alive. You laughed. They didn't. And that's how you became a messenger for the Royal Army v. Jabba the Desperate and those who run faster than they think. In the early days, it even seemed exciting. The sound of hooves, the smell of leather, the feeling of being among important men. But soon you realized no one saw you as a hero. To them, you were just the idiot who ran between arrows, delivering notes that said things like hold the line or we all dead. Maybe you'll come back tomorrow. The general called you a pigeon with legs. You didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so you did both. The first battlefield you saw didn't look like a field. It looked like a kitchen after an explosion. Blood, smoke, pieces of people who weren't people anymore. The floor was slippery from the crushed bodies. And there you were, trying to look useful, holding a mud-stained piece of paper and praying no one would notice you. Spoiler, everyone noticed. An arrow grazed your ear, and you felt the sound inside your skull. The second one pierced the horse. It fell, and you fell with it, biting mud and teeth. When you woke up, a man was shouting at you in a language you didn't understand. He had a sword in his hand and half his face was missing. You did what every hero does. You ran. You ran as if hell had an address and your name was the addressee. You delivered the message, or what was left of it. The general didn't even glance. He took the parchment and said, "You took your time. It took you a while." As if crossing a valley full of death were a delay for mail. From then on, you learned the #1 rule of messengers. No one cares about you until you're dead. Then, they'll send someone else in your place. Over time, your body learns to live on the edge. You run more, sleep less, and begin to recognize the sound of bullets like you recognize your own dog's bark. The smell of gunpowder becomes perfume, and fear becomes routine. Sometimes you carry messages that change battles. Other times you carry love notes between officers and lovers hidden in the tents. Once you carried a letter from a king asking for peace and nearly died before it arrived. The irony, by the time it arrived, the other king was already dead. But the worst part wasn't running among the arrows. It was stopping. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking about war is like smelling a corpse. It never leaves your mind. You began memorizing the faces of the dead, as if each one were a reminder of where you shouldn't return. At night, the other soldiers slept drenched in wine. Not you. You kept wiping the mud from your boots and trying to remember if you still had a name. One day, you were ordered to carry a message to the other side of the river, where the enemy had surrounded the army. "No one will attack you. You are unarmed," they said. Of course, because war is full of gentlemen. You strapped the parchment to your chest, mounted your horse, and set off. Halfway across, a cannon screamed. The ground shook, the horse reared, and the world turned to water and fire. When you opened your eyes, you were alone, without a horse, without a message, and with your leg trapped under a wagon wheel. You tried to free yourself. You tried again and again, until you realized that only one of your legs still obeyed. You tore the cloth from your shirt to staunch the bleeding and crawled. Every meter was a promise, every breath, a gamble. When you finally reached the general's tent, you handed him a piece of burned parchment and a cry that sounded more like a sob. The general sighed and said, "At least you came in one piece." You looked at your missing leg and laughed. He didn't get the joke. Days later, barely able to walk, they gave you another scroll and another horse. "Heroes don't rest," they said. You replied, "Neither do idiots." But no one listened. War has no time for sarcasm. On the way, it started to rain. And not that beautiful spring rain. It was a heavy, warlike rain, meant to wash away blood. Not too cool. The mud tugged at your boots, the thunder competed with the gunshots, and you could only think of one thing: how many more messages until you became one of them? From afar, he saw the enemy flag fluttering and knew he wouldn't return. His horse trembled, so did you, but the messenger didn't back down. Not out of bravery, but out of stubbornness. He crossed the hill, the letter soaked in his chest and his heart beating like an execution drum. Every step was a cruel joke of fate. After all, you carried words, and words have never been worth so little. The enemy line approached, and for a second you considered surrendering. You did. But then you remembered that captured messengers aren't spared. They just take longer to die. So you tightened your grip on the reins and shouted, not a war cry, but one of rage, exhaustion, irony. The kind of cry even the gods pretend not to hear. When the first shot rang out, you felt the impact before the sound. The horse fell, the world turning to smoke and silence. You tried to get up, but your body couldn't remember how. The letter, still clutched to your chest, protected as if it were worth more than you, and maybe it was. The rain intensified, mixing mud and blood, and there lying among the remains of the battle, you realized the truth no one told you. A messenger is not a hero, but a witness. A witness to the mistakes of others, the pride of kings, human stupidity, and you of course, were at the center of it all. With the honor of being the only idiot who saw the beginning and the end and still had to deliver a message in between. You wake with the taste of iron in your mouth and the distant sound of someone shouting orders that no longer make sense. The world around you is a blur of smoke and broken bones, and you only realize you're still alive when you feel the cold seep through some hole in your body that shouldn't be there. The sky is gray, the ground red, and you're in the middle, the unluckiest of the two. A crow lands nearby and looks at you as if to ask, "Can I start now?" You laugh, because, deep down, it's funny. Surviving war only to become bird food? You try to drag yourself along, but your body protests. Everything hurts. Every breath is a reminder that perhaps it would have been better to have died. Amidst the chaos, you hear footsteps, heavy boots, dirty uniforms, voices in another language. Enemies, they see you, laugh, point. One of them turns you over with the tip of his bayonet, curious, as if examining a still-moving creature. When they notice the letter strapped to your chest, the laughter dies. One of them rips off the parchment and opens it, hoping to find secrets. But, unfortunately for everyone, it's just a ridiculous order. Advance the hill tomorrow at dawn. The soldier spits on the ground, looks at you, and says something that, even without understanding, you know what it means. You almost died for this. They kick you, but they don't kill you. Not yet. They decide to use you as bait, to let another messenger come and get you. So they tie you to a makeshift post in the middle of the open field. The wind blows, the flies arrive, and you start laughing again. Laughing out loud, uncontrollably. Because there is nothing funnier than dying slowly in the name of someone who doesn't even remember your name. The hours pass. The sun turns to liquid fire. Your throat dries. And just when you think it's over, just as you're about to close your eyes, you hear a familiar sound. Horse hooves. Another messenger. The poor guy. He sees you, tries to run, but the ambush happens quickly. Screams, gunshots, and another body on the ground. You don't know whether to feel pity or envy. Night falls, and your enemies abandon you there. Half alive, half dead. Completely useless. You pull yourself free from the ropes with your teeth and crawl to the other messenger's body. You pick up his letter, wet-torn, smelling of gunpowder, and read it. Retreat immediately. You start laughing so loudly it scares the rats. They were headed for certain death, and here you are, serving as a decorative steak. War is efficient if the goal is to make no one win. In the morning, you wake up surrounded by vultures. One of them pulls your hair as if to say, "Enough." Huh. You get up, or try. Your body is a bundle of denial. You limp along until you find the other messenger's horse. The animal is also injured, but it breathes. The two of you are the perfect portrait of military glory. Two cripples trying to pretend they are still good for something. With what little strength you have left, you mount and make your way back to camp. Your horse's every step is a sob, your every breath a protest. When you finally arrive, the guards don't even recognize you. They look at you as if a ghost has asked for shelter. "We thought you were dead," they say. You reply, "Me too." They don't laugh. The general greets you with the same expression as always, like someone who sees a glass half empty and blames the glass for not being full. He asks if the message arrived. You hand over the other messenger's letter and say, "It arrived late." The general reads it, sighs and replies, "Then it's your fault. It's always your fault." You realize that, in the hierarchy of war, the messenger is the stepping stone between error and excuse. After that, they give you a new scroll. Last mission, they say. You almost believe it. This time the letter must be delivered to a commander on the other side of the forest, a place so overrun with enemies that even the wind avoids passing through. You look at the general and ask, "Why don't you send a pigeon?" He replies, "Pigeons come back." And there you go again. Mounted on a tired horse, your heart beating like an execution drum. The forest swallows you whole. The sound of war fades, replaced by the buzzing of flies and the snapping of branches. The letter seems to weigh more with every mile. At some point, you start talking to yourself, just to keep from going mad. You talk to the horse, to the trees, to the wind, and everyone ignores you just like the living. Suddenly, the silence ends. A shot, then another. The horse rears, and you fall. You roll in the mud and hide behind a tree trunk, trembling, trying to remember what the plan was. Spoiler, there was no plan. Just run. Always run. But your leg doesn't respond, and for the first time, you don't try. You just stand there, leaning against the tree, clutching the letter to your chest like a lucky charm. The enemies approach. Slowly, one of them spots you, raises his gun, and hesitates. Perhaps because he sees you as he is, a small man doing the big work of an idiot. He lowers his gun and picks up the letter. He reads it, unconditional surrender. He laughs. Laughter is all that remains. Then he looks you in the eye and says something that sounds like, "At least it was good for something." Hours later, the sound of gunfire returns, but you don't. You lie there, face turned to the sky. The letter, now ownerless, flies with the wind and lands in a pool of blood that you can't tell whose it is. And while the world keeps turning, the armies keep fighting, and the generals keep making mistakes. You rest finally off course, finally free of the next message. Days pass, the body is found by a soldier who doesn't even know his name. He searches his pockets, takes out the coins, wipes off the mud and says, "Another messenger." And that's it. No honor, no statue, no song. Just another piece of flesh that ran too fast for its own good. In the end, this was what being a messenger on the battlefield was all about. Delivering words that never changed anything, dying along the way, and still being blamed for the delay. No king remembered his face, no poet remembered his name. But somehow, word did because it always needed one more. And when the drums beat again, somewhere, another idiot would climb a horse, clutch a scroll to his chest and think, "This time, maybe I'll come back." But you know, no messenger ever returns in one piece. Some return legless, some return soulless, and the luckiest, well, they never return.